We'll go Reed, and then we'll go to Dustin. Go ahead, Reed.
Reed Spencer with Sporting News. Jeff, first of all, now that you've had some races with Alan, could you compare sort of stylistically Stevie and Alan and the way you communicate with them? And second, you've had a lot of change over the last year. I mean, you changed spotters last year. This year you've got a completely new group preparing and pitting the car. How big an adjustment has that been, or has it been relatively seamless?
Well, I mean, I say, Alan and his group have made it very easy for me. We spent a lot of time over the off season, with me in the shop and with the engineers and with Alan. We did a lot of work inside the car with the cockpit, with the seat, because just mounting the seats, being able to do it consistently. We did a whole new dash in the car as well. That was all geared and designed around me. And the whole process to me made me feel very at home and comfortable that they were putting that kind of effort in there to get me in the car. And we did some testing as well. We went out to Colorado. I can't remember the name of it. It's near Colorado Springs. But we had a great test there and kind of a bonding session, So Phoenix to me was not that big of a surprise. I thought we were going to run good at Phoenix, and we did. So that's the kind of relationship that it's been, and it started pretty early. And you got to understand too, I've known Alan for a long time. I mean, Alan's been at Hendrick for a very long time, and I can remember when Kyle was his driver, and we would talk about the cars and the setups, I just had a tremendous amount of respect for Alan back then, because you gotta understand that was a young Kyle Busch, and Kyle liked to make sure he got the car into the wall every happy hour. And that's the way he's just talented, pushes hard, but it frustrated the team a little bit, and they usually were repairing the car instead of having the car on the track, and so we had conversations about that a lot. But then they'd go into the race and they would fly, and be great. But as far as comparing Alan to Steve, I mean, I think Alan, he's got more of an engineering background in history and education. Stevie he's one of these self-taught. He's just a racer. He's been around it his whole life through his father. He's smart. And he's got a lot of personality, and I think the reason why that it's really gelling well with Junior is, I think Junior he needs somebody to pull that out, and that's how Steve has got a lot of confidence in himself, and he opens up the dialogue and the conversation. For Alan and I think we mesh very well. I think we have similar personalities to where we don't talk a lot, but when we do, it's straight to the point. But yet, then we laugh, about stuff too, and so. But to me, it's really about getting the information. Just like this past weekend, for instance, I can now. This is the difference between me and Alan, is I vent and say things and push the button on the radio, and say things that are unnecessary to be said. Now, Alan, he won't do that at all. So I'll say something, and the great thing is he doesn't react, at least not on the radio. And that actually gets my attention. I react, I say something, my tone, whatever it is, my words, and he just says 10-4. And that in the race car, that's what you need when you're in that moment, when you're frustrated or when you're trying to vent. And in the closing laps of that race, the car was getting really loose, and so he wanted to make an adjustment. And because of the way that our relationship is built, I kind of called back on the adjustment and said, okay, I know I've been venting and I've been screaming about being loose, but I'm not that loose, so let's not go that far. And I mean, we had a car that won the race, so. And even there was one time I got real loose in that last run and came on the radio screaming because I thought I about hit the wall, and he's like, "You okay?" It wasn't like a panic thing. He just so I like how he's calm in those situations, and I'm like that, except for I do vent through words, and so I think we're very similar in a lot of ways, and I think that if we're not running well, one thing I can guarantee is it's not the communication between us.
Let's go Dustin and then Nate, and then we'll see where we are. Go ahead, Dustin. Raise your hand. Get him a mic, please.
Dustin Long, Landmark Newspapers. Jeff, you talked after last week's win about how throughout your career there's always been a certain way you drove the car, and you admitted that you didn't always like that about yourself, but that's the way it was. As these cars, tires, and everything have changed over the years, even the last couple years, what ways have you changed, and what ways have you been able to stay the same throughout all this constant change in the sport? How's it challenged you?
Well, I'll take you way back, because I just did an interview before I came over here talking about the Atlanta 1992 race and how much the sport's changed. And, the thing that's changed the most is the cars and the setups. If you go back to those old clips and videos and you see what we have today, I mean, today it's all about that splitter has to be sealed to the ground, and it's all about car attitude and ride quality and all these things. I mean, back then we didn't even care about the front air dam. It could be 6-8 inches off the ground. We're like, as long as the right spring is in the right front or in the right rear, then didn't matter. And along the way, probably I would say 1999, 2000, and this is these are years that I struggled those years because it started going to big sway bars, big right rear springs, and the platform of the car completely changed, but yet the downforce increased dramatically. So, for me, that transition was about not having a car that rolled over and sat down on a spring, whether it be the right front or the right rear. And you didn't, you used to turn the car with the right front spring. Coming down on the right front spring. Now we go down on the right front spring to get more downforce, and so it took me a couple years. Then 2001, we got it figured out, and it wasn't I changed anything. It was getting used to it, as well as trying to make that setup work for me. I'm the kind of driver I work off the right front. The right front is, I want to feel that right front, and it has to do with how you position your hands on the steering wheel, how you pull with your left and push with your right. Everybody does it different. I mean, you got Mark Martin puts his elbow into it. You've got some guys pull with their left. Some guys are right hand dominant, some guys are left hand dominant. I mean, all those things play a role in how they feel the car. You got some guys like to go off the right rear, and some guys like to go off the right front. I like to go off the right front. So as things change with the setups in the cars, I'm fine with that, because we're making more downforce, we're making the cars go faster, and even though the feel changes a little bit, as long as we adapt it to my style where I'm still feeling the right front the way that I want to feel it. And we've had to do some funky things to these cars over the last few years to get them to have the downforce. You see the car skewed now, running sideways down the straightaway. Well, that has an effect as it turns in the corner as well, and what it does when you get on the throttle. So, some of those things are just adapting to them, and some of them are, adapting them for you. And that's why when you see 4 cars at Hendrick Motorsports, you say, well, this one's running good, why can't you just put that in there? It just doesn't work, like that. You've got to find the advantages that are in that, but then work them around your setup. And I would say that's probably the one thing that Alan and I have had to work with, is he had Mark Martin. Mark runs a very, very free race car and rolls through the corner, very quick. I drive in deep and probably give up the middle a little bit, but try to get off the corner strong as well. So we've had to work around that aspect of it as to what I like and what I need in the car versus what he's been used to.
Final question, Nate, and then we've got to move on. I'm sorry if you had a question and weren't able to get it in.
Nate Ryan, USA Today. Jeff, you mentioned Mid-Ohio. I haven't heard of a lot of other NASCAR teams going there to test. How did that idea pop up, and what do you gain from that course, say, versus a VIR or some of the other places you guys go for road courses?
Well, I've always said that we've been trying to go to road courses for all these years that I've been in this sport to try to test, and to me, none of them are anywhere close to the tracks that we go. VIR, the thing that's nice about it's a nice track, and there's some hard braking sections. So if you want to go test out your transmission and get used to doing some shifting and downshifting and check out your brakes, great, go to VIR. If you want to try to get handling characteristics for Watkins Glen or Sonoma, forget it. And we go to Road Atlanta because it's a faster road course, which is more like Watkins Glen, which is a fast road course. But again, handling characteristics I think are really minimal. Sonoma is a technical, low grip road course with a lot of elevation changes, and I don't know who came about with Mid Ohio. I just know that Alan mentioned it, to me. He said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Hey, I'm up for it. To me, these other places we go to are useless, and if you're trying to really get details." And so he mentioned something about Boris. Had gone there and thought it was okay, but he still liked Road Atlanta. But we thought because all the laps he'd been there, we could go together and maybe learn something. And I don't know if we did. We'll find out. When we get to Sonoma, it's not Sonoma, but I kind of liked some of the transitions into the corner, some of the elevation changes that I thought could help us for Sonoma. And we'll find out. But I had fun. It was a nice try. I've always wanted to go there. It was hot. It was like 98 degrees, 90% humidity. It was ridiculously hot. So, I definitely think from a grip level, we were very similar to what we're going to have in Sonoma. My first time there, Boris obviously has made thousands of laps there, so I was pretty happy with our pace because of that.
Jeff, thank you so much for
thank
your
you guys.
time today. Good luck this weekend.